everybody. Welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast.
Hello.
I'm your host, Steph.
I'm Liz.
And we are so excited to be here with you guys today. Thank you so much for listening in.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we really
Steph, I appreciate the cues that you give me to talk. I can't help that I'm a quiet person, Steph.
Sometimes
You're like, and?
sometimes I'm like waiting for you to say something and you won't, and there's this like awkward like pause, and so to avoid that I'm like,
Story of my life.
This is your turn.
Awkward pauses are the story of my life.
This is your turn to welcome people to the podcast.
Hello, everybody. Follow us on Instagram. Oh, God.
Jeez. If this is your first time listening in, welcome to the Butterfly Effect. If you guys haven't listened to our first 2 episodes, we just want to encourage you, give it a listen. Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
The point of this podcast is to start a conversation. We love to hear your guys' stories, comments, feedback, and what you guys want to hear us talk about. So make sure you guys, hit us up. We want to talk to you. We want to create this community. One of my favorite things that Liz always says is create the community you want to be a part of. And we want to be a part of a community that's able to share stories and not be afraid to be honest and transparent and talk about tough topics.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm so excited about today's topic. Because it is a tough topic, but a topic that is so needed to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It's so relatable. And it gives us a little bit of an insight into a little bit the mind of an artist. So I'm really, really excited about this podcast.
I'm nervous.
And the reason why she's nervous is because this topic is about Liz's story. So I'm excited.
My story with music.
Her story with music, yeah. So not her story, but like it is a big part of who you are and what shaped you today and why you're doing what you're doing today. And so yeah, let's jump right into it.
Okay.
So again, we want to welcome you. This is the mind of an artist.
Love it.
So yeah. I want us to kind of preface some things before we get started. Sure. When we were talking about this topic, there were some things that you were saying to me, like while we were kind of taking down notes and stuff like that you specifically wanted to preface. Did you want to jump into that real quick?
Yeah. First, I just wanted to talk about that. This is a story of hope for people who are artists specifically. Anybody, but specifically geared towards artists. And it's a story of hope, and it sounds heavy and it's tough, but I think that a lot of people are going to be able to relate to this, and it's something that I really don't talk about, just because I don't like to share these types of things with just like random people, even though that's what I'm doing right now. But I feel like the people who are listening genuinely want to hear from me. So that's why I am sharing this.
We're in Lazarus Studios right now. I know that you've always shared with me that you wanted this to be a safe space. So again, like, you're safe. You know what I'm saying? Everyone who comes on this podcast, like, you're safe. Like, we're not here to out you. Like, this is a very, very vulnerable topic. When people are sharing their stories, it's vulnerable.
Yeah, it is very vulnerable.
So I'm really excited to kind of walk through this. I don't think people know.
No.
Your story, your experiences, your mindset, and what you've actually grown through.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience when it comes to the music industry, in particular, like the business side of it.
Right.
But I don't really share it because I don't want to come off as like prideful. That's like my biggest fear is I hate pride, and I want to steer clear of it.
Right.
And so I don't really share it that often.
Right.
And when I do, it's for a purpose.
Right.
So.
Right. So, yeah, no, that's great. So let's get started here. I have some things written down here that I want to ask you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So let's kind of walk through the timeline of like Elizabeth, because you weren't always called Elizabeth, and I kind of touched on it our first podcast. Again, if you haven't listened to it, go give it a listen. You're now Elizabeth, but you were first called Leah.
Yeah, I mean, is it your birth name?
Your birth name.
Yeah, my birth name's Leah Elizabeth. And yeah, I decided that I wanted to go by my middle name because I felt that my first name there was a lot attached to it, and I didn't really see myself as that person anymore. And I didn't want to be that person anymore.
Sure.
So I felt like the best way to kind of start this new life and rebirth of a person is to change my name. And, that's in the Bible a lot. So I was like, you know what? Let me just do it. It's my middle name. So it's not like I just randomly picked a name out of like a name book. It's like it was given to me.
Sure.
But I just prefer to go by that name.
Right. So yeah, that's really exciting. I think that's cool that you got to. I remember like when you were like, I'm gonna change my name. I remember being like, dang, that's so rad. Like that's such a cool story.
I feel like though you were kind of the person who was like, why don't you just change your name? Yeah,
well, this is what happened. I think that you were telling me that you wanted to change your name, but you were kind of afraid, like you were embarrassed to do it.
Yeah, and I remember when I started to like introduce myself as Elizabeth instead of Leah to people that I knew, they would laugh at me.
Right.
They were like,
they would take it as a joke.
I'd be like, no, but like this is legit. Like I'm just trying to rewrite my history right now.
Right. Yeah, they would take it as a joke and and I remember you being like, well, I don't know, like should I do it? And I remember you felt so strongly from the Lord, and I'm like the type of person that's like, well, if you felt strongly from the Lord, you better go ahead and do that thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'll encourage and push. And I remember us like looking up like biblical people that like changed their name when they had such an encounter with God that was life changing, and it was like a shift. Like when God changed something on the inside, he normally gave them a new name to match what happened on the inside. And so I think like it's really cool that now like we introduce you as Liz,
and that's exactly like what it is.
Right.
Like I don't feel like Leah anymore.
Right.
I feel like Elizabeth.
Sure.
Which is why it was so important for me to like change it and introduce myself as that. I mean, obviously like some family members and like some people like that, I just go by Leah because it's hard to explain to people who aren't saved, that type of thing.
Right.
But if it's like a stranger, I just on my social media it's Elizabeth, but it's my name anyway, so. Sure.
Yeah. So now we're going to tell the story of Elizabeth, Leah to Elizabeth, right?
Yeah.
Like that transformation.
Yeah.
So walk me through kind of how it all started. You're in your mom's belly, right? We all know like how does creation start? So you're in your mom's belly, and just walk me through kind of from that point up to like when you started singing and stuff like that. So let's kind of work from there.
So when I was conceived, there was multiple people who went up to my parents and they were like, she's going to sing. She's going to be a singer and she's going to be into music. And which was really cool. And so I came out, and I actually have I called him Uncle Jerry. He wrote this letter to me while I was in my mother's womb, just kind of like speaking life over me and speaking these things over me. And one of the things that he spoke over me was that like music would be the way that I kind of commune with God, and just who I am as a person is going to be music. And it's crazy that he wrote that before I was even here. So yeah, music has always been a part of my life ever since I can remember. I don't remember a distinct moment of when it started, but I know that I started doing music in like church plays and just singing. They would just have me sing randomly. They would just give me a microphone, and I remember just like before the sermon would start, after worship, I would just get up there and just sing on a microphone. It would just throw me up there, and it was fine. I mean, I was nervous because I don't like to be in front of people, but I loved it. Once I started singing, it was fine. All of the fear went away. But that's when I started to get into music.
So you're what, like 5?
Yeah, I think so.
You're baby, little.
Yeah.
And you're singing. Music is what's pretty much spoken over you.
Yeah.
It's like what you were destined
It's my
to
destiny.
do. It's your destiny. And so your parents obviously are like, let's steward this calling over our daughter's life, right?
Yeah.
Let's steward like this gifting that she has. And let's really pour into that. So walk me through some of your experiences. So you're singing at church, all this stuff, but what were you doing outside of church? Because I remember when we were, and I think this is so rad, when we're like driving to go see my parents, every single time we pass by a certain area like that overlooks the city, New York City, you're like, Steph, like I remember having to drive and like do all these things and like go to these schools and like stuff like that. I remember being like, that's awesome. And you were like, yeah, like that is pretty cool. Like I didn't really think of it like that. So let's share with the audience a little bit about those experiences.
Yeah. So I started to get into like the entertainment industry before I started to get into the music industry. And so I went to a modeling, acting, and singing school, and which is, I hated it. But Mom, you really believed in me. I really appreciate all the effort, all the driving, all of that, all the time she spent with me. But we would drive there a lot. And I was homeschooled at the time. I was pulled out of school, public school in 5th grade. So I had a lot of time on my hands. I could kind of leave. I had a lot of, what is the word?
Like leeway.
Yeah, a lot of leeway.
Sure.
So I was always there. And I started doing like modeling classes, which I really, really enjoyed. I didn't like acting and I hated singing.
Right.
Hated it. I don't know why. I hated it at the time. And so I started to do like modeling and I really, really enjoyed it. And it wasn't modeling like, oh, like just take a picture. It was like runway.
It's like fashion.
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 Yeah. So the teacher, my runway teacher, he was actually a designer and a New York based designer. And so he didn't hire us, but some of the girls in the class that he saw like potential in,
right,
he really put a lot of his attention in helping us perfect that craft.
Right.
And so one of the ways of perfecting that craft was to actually be able to go do runway.
That's crazy.
At like bars and clubs very late at night.
Sure.
On like, I remember a specific one, it was beautiful. I was terrified, but it was beautiful and very tired. And it was in New York and it was on this really beautiful rooftop bar and club. It was the coolest thing ever. But I remember like my love for like fashion and like makeup and like hair and all of that started there because it wasn't like runway where it was like no makeup, bare face. It was like runway, like Vogue, like type of atmosphere.
Sure.
Very eccentric people. I was surrounded by very eccentric people, and I really loved it, but I was scared. Right. And I was very young.
Right.
But yeah, that's when I started to get into like the entertainment type of aspect of it. And yeah, I loved it.
And that's what like really sparked like your creativity.
Yeah, I would say looking back on it, that's like I look back and I'm like, wow, I would love to do that nowadays.
Right. Yeah. So you're doing this modeling school. At the same time, you're being homeschooled, correct?
Yeah.
So you have to maintain kind of that in a sense. Yeah. And you're doing your acting, you're doing modeling, you're doing singing. And how old are you like at this point?
Maybe 10.
If you could remember, 10?
Maybe 10, 11.
That's crazy. Yeah. I think that's so rad that you were able to have like an experience like that. Like as much as like you were like, oh my gosh, I was terrified. And like at first I didn't want to do it. Like to be able.
It was so cool.
Yeah. Like to be able to say like, man, like I did this thing.
Remember like going into the city with my whole family because we do everything together. Right. Sam, Micah, my parents, Josh. Like we went to the designer's home in New York and like the Bronx. I don't know where it was, but it was in New York. And he would literally make dresses just just for me, like make outfits just tailored to my body.
That's crazy.
Which was amazing. It was the coolest thing.
Right.
Like getting to wear a dress or like an outfit that is only designed for you.
Right.
Is the coolest thing.
Right. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like what an experience that is.
I
Every
was
time
really young.
every time you tell that story, I'm like, girl, like that is, I want everybody
And
to know
people
that.
will probably be like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like, ooh. But like, it wasn't like that. Like he wasn't like that.
Right.
And like the parents, he was very involved with like the parents, and like it wasn't like that. It was really, really dope. Really cool.
Sure. That's like really, really
Not
awesome.
a lot of people know that actually.
Yeah. That's why I love when
Yeah.
you share that story, because I'm like, man, that's such a cool story. Like that's such a cool part of your life that I don't
Yeah.
think many people like know about you. Like that's like a little like secret nugget. Like
Yeah,
when
there's a
people are
bunch
like,
of them that I'm not going to share, but yeah, that's definitely one of
yeah,
them.
like that. I'm like, wow, good for her. Like she really did that, you know?
Yeah.
Not in like a prideful way, like not to be like, well, yeah, she really did that, but like to just be like no, like that's an experience, and that's
Yeah.
a really cool experience.
Yeah.
And like I think it's so important to share, because it is what in a sense started your interest in creating,
Yeah.
right?
Dude.
So you're doing the acting, the modeling school, and then after the acting modeling school, what took place?
I started to get into singing.
The one thing that you were like, I hate this.
I told my mom, I'm like, I'm not doing singing classes. I'm not doing it. And then somehow I just ended up loving singing.
What was her response to you when you said that? Do you remember?
Her poor heart was probably crushed. I don't remember.
Because if you like,
I know.
like she was told that you would
I
be
know.
into music,
And that's the one thing I'm like, I'm not doing
and you're rejecting it.
Yeah. I was like, I'll do Runaway.
Shout out Sue.
Oh, God.
So you're doing the acting, you're doing the modeling thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so now here we are, let's fast forward like around, I guess, when you're like, I guess 12, 13,
Mhm.
would you say?
Yeah.
And now you are doing music,
Yeah.
right? Singing.
The one thing I said I wouldn't do.
The one thing you said you wouldn't do. So you're doing music, you're doing singing. And how long were you doing that for?
4.5 years.
4.5 years of music and singing. And would you say like it was something like that you were like a career?
Yeah. I started to like pursue it as an actual career. My parents really helped with that. They we found like managers through a friend, a church friend, and they were amazing. Well, the wife was amazing. Man, not so much. But yeah, it was really, it started to just kind of take off and snowball into this like really beautiful thing.
What did it look like? What was your day-to-day thing like in this now career, quote unquote, let's call it a career, that you're building, right?
Yeah.
That you're kind of like, that snowball, it took off.
Yeah, it's not something that I can really like pinpoint, which is interesting because I can't really pinpoint any of the things when I started doing music.
Right.
And I think that's really cool, to be honest, because it's always just been a part of my life. It's always been something that I knew would be there. But anyway, so I started pursuing it as an actual career. I got managers, my parents, my brother-in-law, Micah, was in my band. And I started going to a studio in like New Jersey, and then a studio in, I think it was New Jersey or PA. I'm not sure the place. They just drove me there, and I did what I needed to do. And then like studios in New York. Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah, so I imagine like you probably had practice all the time.
Yeah, we had practice in my basement like every single week.
Right.
With people who were like 5 years older than me. I was really young, but yeah, it was definitely like, it happened really, really fast.
Right. So it just took off.
It just went.
It just happened.
It just started.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're doing this thing for about 4.5 years.
Yeah.
Right. And then walk me through your mentality during that.
Yeah.
Like what was going on? So you were, let's say you're about 12, 13, 14, like during those years. And like what is going on in your head during those times? Like do you remember?
Yeah, I think honestly a lot of it I kind of blocked out because it was really tough.
Mm-hmm.
Before I get into like that, I just want to preface like how much I appreciate my parents and my one manager, she was amazing, and especially like Micah and, you know, Sam. And Micah's my brother-in-law and Sam's my sister. But yeah, without them, I don't think that I would have made it out of that situation.
Sure.
And I like so appreciate them loving me. Like I say this all the time, Micah taught me in that time what unconditional love looks like.
Sure.
And it was a really, really hard time for not just me, but like the whole family. Kind of went through a lot with that because it took a toll not just on me, but like everybody was involved. So everybody had a really tough time through that. And a lot of people, specifically like my parents and Micah and Sam, they gave everything to me. And they really gave up a lot of things for just my dream to happen.
Sure.
And I really, really appreciate, and I'm still appreciative of all of that. So I just want to say shout out to you guys for keeping me sane and alive during that time.
Right. Yeah. And I can imagine, I think that's something that people forget when it comes to artists. Like, it's not just the artist, but there's a whole lot of people that are involved when it comes to the artist, right? Because what we see is the person, right? We see the person on stage, we see the music.
They're just the face of it. I mean, there's a whole team of people just, yeah. But I think like the reason why what I'm going to get to was so difficult is because of my age. Right. And my mom tells me this a lot. She says, like, Liz, if I didn't know that this is the way you thought or this is what you were going through, and if I were to know that, then I wouldn't have put you through what went down. Right. She would have handled it differently. Yeah, she would have handled it completely differently.
Right. And I think one thing that just to kind of share on my point of view, like outsider looking in, that I know about your parents is that they're incredibly supportive people. That their heart and your entire family, I would say that, like from Sam, Micah, Josh, like even Gigi, like every person in this household has such a heart for the success of the ones that they love. And even the ones that they don't know, they're just like incredible people when it comes to supporting and just a whole bunch of other things. So I know for a fact, like their heart and their desire, which you know too, is like, it was always to see you succeed. Of course. And always to see you flourish. Right. Jinx. It was always to see those things. So yeah, like that's why I believe like this is such an important thing, because again, like I was saying, like there's so much to an artist. Like there's family and there's things going on in family, and like people just see an artist and they expect an artist to be on a certain pedestal, or because they're on a platform, we tend to forget like they're humans, and especially young artists. Right? Like you were young.
I was really young.
You were young, so you were still developing mentally, emotionally, physically, you know what I'm saying? And so like it was all this pressure placed on a 12-year-old.
Yeah, and at that time, not even just at the time, the music industry is really warped, and it's difficult for young people. I don't think, to be honest, like I don't think it's healthy for somebody really young to be in the music industry. It's intense. Sure. And the reason why I say that is because of what I experienced. And what I experienced was having to put my emotions to the side and be a 22-year-old when I was 12 and 13 and expected to do that, which was really hard, especially when I didn't even know what a 22-year-old acted like. I was just being what everybody told me to be, or it was really hard for me to be that. Right. So you were pretty much carrying this weight that you didn't even know how to articulate it correctly. Yeah. And not that anybody wanted to put that weight on you, but this was what was necessary in order for that dream, let's say quote unquote dream, to come to pass, was for you to carry this weight at this age. Yeah. Right? So I mean, I was like, I'm an introvert. Right. So it was really hard for me because the whole point of doing music is so you can connect with the people that listen to it. Right. And I wasn't there yet. Music wasn't really the desire. It was there, like the calling was there, but my desire for it and my passion and my love for it wasn't, in a sense, it wasn't developed. It was there, but it wasn't developed to the point where I can start pursuing it as an actual career at the age that I was at. And like I was going to like kids' birthday parties, stuff like that, where like I walk into the room and they like start screaming and I'm like, why are you like, I don't,
right.
What do you see that I'm not seeing?
Right.
Like what's going on?
Sure.
And, you know, it was so weird because I was so young, yet I had a really, a following that were like 6, 7, 8-year-olds. And then I had a following that were like 20 and up.
Right.
And that was so weird. Like, how do I connect with either of these people?
Right.
I can't.
Right.
And that was really hard for me because I, at that time, didn't know how to connect. I just knew that I was quiet. I was very, very shy unless I was on stage. And yeah, it was really hard for when I got off stage and I had to go and show face.
Right.
And well, you have to be this and you have to be that. And I was like, okay.
Right.
But never being enough.
Right. So you're struggling with the like, I want to kind of sit there for a second. So you're dealing with this mentality of like, I emotionally, mentally can't be that expectation that is required of me. Yeah. But I need to be that. But I keep missing it.
Yeah. And I think like, another reason why I think that it's a weird thing to put children and young people in the music industry is because people are looking for somebody to look up to, and that's why people go to shows. And it's not just because they like the music, they like who the person is.
Right.
And at that age, I can't be that. All I can do is put out music. But when it comes to me, like, sure, I can inspire these people, but like I kind of can't because I'm so young. I don't even know what inspiring means.
Right.
And to put that on my shoulders and have to be that person for people at such a young age, it kills me.
Right. Right. So,
and now I know that.
Right,
like
but
now,
that's what I was going to say, because was that ever something that you communicated with your managers or the people that were pretty much like your team? Were you ever like, this, I don't know how to do, I'm not saying that you should have known how to do that, but I'm saying, was that ever a conversation that you had with them?
No.
Right.
No, it was only, you had to be this or you had to, I mean, I had meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. My whole life for 4.5 years was just long meetings.
Right. Which is
of like what I'm doing wrong. And it was really hard.
Right. And the thing is like, it wasn't meant to tear you down.
Absolutely not.
It's just like, this is what it takes to be.
The thing is
an artist of this caliber.
Yeah, they saw my potential, but I wasn't ready to do that.
Right.
Yeah, that's all it comes down to is I just wasn't ready.
Right.
And that's fine. And I would go to meetings in New York with like record reps and record scouts, and my music was like one of the scouts gave my music to LA Reid, which is a huge, like he's the guy in the music industry.
Right.
And like that was insane. Like I was becoming successful, but I wasn't becoming successful in my emotions. And it was really hard. It was like everything was successful on the outside, but on the inside, there was nothing. It was vacant. And I played shows that like people would have like, it was their dream to play. Like I remember playing shows at like the Stone Pony and Croc Rock and Bamboozle and Rev Gen, and it was like dreams of mine to play at those places. And the people that I would play with, I was always the youngest.
Right.
And you get a 13-year-old up there, and then you have like a 22-year-old group, and they're like, they hate me.
Right.
Because they're like, how are you here? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
And yeah, it was really hard. I felt so disconnected because it was it was a world that I just wasn't ready for. Whereas now I'm so ready for that. Now I want to connect with people. Now I'm ready to like connect with other artists and like, hey, want to collab, like stuff like that. Whereas back then I was like, please don't talk to me. I don't know how to socialize. I don't know anything. I don't know who I am. It's interesting.
Right. And so, which is why I love your story, because I think even when you're not an artist, you could relate to the feeling of like at some point in our lives, we've all felt like we were not enough.
Yeah.
Or at some point in our lives, we were all sitting here and like, who am I?
Yeah.
Am I just a person that sings, or am I just a person that helps out, or am I like who am I at my core, apart from the things that I do, apart from my calling? Who am I as a person?
Yeah.
Right?
And I know now, like for sure, that is just a part of my testimony, and it was just a part of building my character. You know what I mean? Like now I know kind of what to expect when it comes to the music industry. I have a lot of knowledge about it.
Right.
Because I've seen it firsthand, not just by researching and stuff. I genuinely have been part of it.
Right.
And I know what it takes, and I know how it works. I know how people think, all of that. I mean, yeah. So I'm definitely ready now.
Right.
I mean, I hope. No, I know I am.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, my character is ready to sustain that.
Right. Yeah. And I think, like towards the end, that's kind of like what you kind of just took the words out of my mouth, like character building to sustain a calling, like a character to sustain what you're called to is one of the most important things.
Yeah.
Like God is, I remember I said this week, like God is not interested in the platform that you're supposed to be on. He's not interested in the millions of people. What he's interested is in you as a person.
Yeah.
Right? He's interested in your development as a person. And so like he'll allow things, right? And he'll allow it to develop you as a person, right? To grow you up, to mature you. And so like I believe like as we continue to kind of work through this, like kind of continue on in your story through this podcast, like that's one of the most beautiful parts of your story.
Yeah. And I definitely don't take for granted what happened, and I don't take for granted all the opportunities, and like I know a huge part of it was like just the hand of God on my life and like favor, because I remember people being like, how are you getting connected with this person? Like, how did that happen? How we've been doing this for like 15 years and you just won and you're here and you're like the youngest person here. How did you do that? What are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, because I didn't even have a relationship with God at that point. So, but yeah, I remember like being in New York, one of the before I stopped music, which is funny. I was kind of at like the peak of everything, and I went to New York, and this was like my big moment. And I was invited to go work with a producer. I don't remember his name. I'm gonna have to ask my mom, or mom, comment down below who this guy's name is if you remember. But the producer was huge. I remember I walked in, and we stayed in New York for 2 days because we didn't know how long it was going to be, because we didn't know what he wanted. He just like was like, hey, come here. I was like, okay.
Right.
And so the whole team went, and we went to his studio, and I sat down in a chair, and he was such a nice man. He was dope. I sat down in a chair, and he goes, Leah, do you know who's sat there before? I was like, no. I'm like 14 or 15. He's like, Beyonce, Justin Timberlake, Justin Bieber. He's just name dropping. And I'm like, okay.
You take the chair home.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And he's like this is what, like, almost in a sense, like, you made it. I was like, oh. So then he took me out of that room, and we went into this room with this beautiful grand piano, and we sat down, and he's like, do you know who was just playing this piano yesterday? I was like, who? He's like, Justin Bieber. And of course at that time, like, Justin Bieber was like at the peak of his career.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. He's like, now sing me a song. Which is why I don't like people telling me to sing. It's a trigger.
If you want to know what she's doing right now, she's pointing at me, because I'm always like, hey, Liz, sing this song.
Like, oh, you're a singer, sing. And I'm like, I don't do that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, but like I remember that being a moment, and I remember leaving, And my family, we just being like, speechless. Like, how did I get here?
Right.
Like, this is amazing. Like, this has got to be God. Like, this is what I'm called to do.
Right.
And the only reason why I know it is because, one, it's been prophesied over me again and again and again. And the places that I got to be at, it's just like, it doesn't happen. Like, that doesn't just happen after only like 4 years of being in the music industry.
Right. And
so one of the issues that was constantly being told to me was that I'm not ready. And it wasn't just by like my manager. It wasn't like that. It was people who knew the music industry, and they were right. I remember the guy sat me down because they threw me in a room with a bunch of writers and they're like, write a song. And I'm like, okay. And I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready. And he sat down with me, and he was like, you're just not ready. Like, you're talented. You have it. Like, I see it, but you're not ready. And like, as heartbreaking as it was, like, I'm so glad that he said that.
Right.
And I'm so glad that those people said that, because they were right.
Right. So how did that make you feel being told that? Like, now you're like, I'm thankful for it. But at the time, like, what was going on in your head when you were being told that constantly, you're not ready? And like, how did it affect your relationships with the people around you?
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah.
It was almost like I felt this need to prove that I was, or fake that I was.
Right.
And it was 4.5 years of me just having to prove to people something that they wanted. Like I'll prove it to you, but not for my sake, for your sake.
Right.
And I learned, like, through that process, that it's not about the people. Like, you have to be doing it for yourself. It's so important. Like, just because people see it in you, if you don't see it in yourself, it's not going to happen.
That's good.
It's just not.
That's good.
And not because like, oh, you're not good enough. No. It's because like, it's God's mercy that it's not going to happen.
Right.
Because he cares way too much about your soul, your emotional state, and all of that, than for you to be successful and be crushed.
Wow. And
I wholeheartedly believe that if I were to get signed and all that, I don't know where I would be.
Right.
I probably wouldn't even be doing music anymore.
Right. Wow. Yeah. So we definitely see, like, there's just like this sense of like a redemption moment. In your story. So you're at the peak of your music.
Career, yeah.
And what happens after this whole like amazing, you're sitting in Justin Bieber's seat. So I know this is a little tough. Like, you're already giving me that face of like, Steph, like,
I hate talking about this because I really don't want people to misinterpret what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And it's tough because like my story, like, I do have moments where it's like, that's pretty freaking cool, dude. Right.
I think all of, like, it wasn't that the whole part was like misery.
No.
And I think like up until this point, I think you've done a good job articulating like, no, I've had these amazing experiences and I've done all these amazing things.
I remember this thing. My very last show that I ever did was actually like one of the best ones. Well, Bamboozle was for sure the best ever. It was like the biggest crowd.
Right.
But I remember, I don't know if any of the girls out there remember Austin Mahone. He was like the next Justin Bieber.
Right.
And how about Rebecca Black? Guys, it's Friday. Gotta get down on Friday. I remember like I booked a show with them, and I remember looking at the flyer, not knowing like Austin Mahone was gonna be there, and me and my best friend were like obsessed with him.
Right.
And I remember we got like the flyer and all this, and I was like, okay, looking for my name, and I found my name on like the flyer, and then I'm like, oh, who else am I gonna be performing with? I don't know. and I look at it and it says like Austin Mahone. And when I tell you I've never fangirled so hard in my life, I started screaming and running around the house.
Oh my goodness.
It was so funny.
That's hilarious.
I just want to tell that story.
What other funny stories? I think it's to kind of like alleviate the whole like, oh, this is tough. Like, what other funny stories do you have when it comes to like this experience?
One time I almost got kidnapped.
I don't know if that's funny.
That's not funny.
I don't know. This is why I never ask you anything funny, is because your humor is so weird.
Oh my God.
Like, it's so weird. So why don't you tell us how you almost got kidnapped? Because you can't just leave us at I almost got kidnapped.
Okay, so I was at Croc Rock, and I don't know if anybody remembers. It's not there anymore, but I would play there a lot. Oh, I have another story that I can tell. Sorry, there's so many, and I'm like, we're all loading in like the stuff. You have to be there like 3 hours early, and we're all just chilling. And I'm hanging out there with my manager, and I'm chilling in the car, like with the hood of the car, with like the hood up and stuff. And this man walks up to me, and he's like, "Ooh, I don't know how old he was. He was old."
Yeah, I was gonna say,
like
how old
50.
was he?
I mean, okay, Dad. 50 is not that old. You're fine. Mom, you're fine.
But for like a 13-year-old.
Yeah, for a 13-year-old, like I was 13 for sure. He comes up to me and he has this like glossy photo of me. And I was like, wait, we don't sell those photos.
Oh, no.
Like, because I had merch, you know what I mean? And we didn't sell those photos. Like,
that's crazy.
He got that off and he went to the printers.
He went to
and like, he was like, give me that good gloss.
You
know what I mean?
Staples.
Yeah, he said, let's go to Staples. Give me that good. And so he prints it out and he comes up to me, and so my manager walked away, and he was only a few feet away. It wasn't too bad. I'm just chilling there on my phone, and he comes up, he goes, are you blah blah blah? I'm not gonna say the name because I don't want anybody looking this up.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. He's like, I came here to see you. I was like, okay. Because I'm like awkward.
You're
like
super antisocial.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. And we're just staring at each other. He's like, can you sign this for me? I'm like, sure. So I sign it for him, and then he goes, oh. And he like looks at my manager, and my manager's back's towards me, towards us, so he can't see. And he's like, can you just come over here? I was like, no. And he's like, no, like my girlfriend's in my car. It's just all the way down there. Can you just come with me? And she's really, really sick, and she really wanted to meet you. And I'm like, no. But I'm pretty sure that he did not have no girlfriend.
Heck no.
I don't know who would date him. I'm sorry, but I don't know who.
No.
And she was not sick.
Oh no.
So yeah, it was definitely weird.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I also have another story. I have to share these somewhere.
Yeah, go ahead.
My obsession with Jeffree Star is like at its all high. I love him. Okay. His makeup is dope.
Right.
And Croc Rock was like the place to play at. And I remember the guy who, again, like we found so much favor with the people there, and the guy who booked the shows would always call us up first if there was like a big person like Snoop Dogg or something like that. I remember I did a show and Snoop Dogg was upstairs and I was playing downstairs, and he was like, you want to go meet Snoop Dogg? And I'm like, no.
Oh my God.
My manager's like, I want to meet Snoop Dogg.
That's
I'm
hilarious.
like, I don't care. Like, I don't like to meet people that do music. I'm really weird.
Funny.
Yeah. So I had a chance to meet Snoop Dogg and I said no. I turned it down. Okay. Anyway.
You get hate mail.
So, yeah. Nowadays I've been like, yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Iconic. But yeah, I was like, no. So
no.
Yeah. He called me up and not me, my manager, and he was like, oh, okay, so this is when Jeffree Star was doing music, and I was weird. Yeah, he was doing weird stuff. All right. He was in one of those weird times.
Right.
And the guy, he was like, we called him Tarzan because he looked like Tarzan. Tarzan was like, so I have this big show. It's upstairs, which was the best place to play. And he was like, it's with this guy. His name is Jeffree Star. Do you want to play? And we're like, okay, we'll get back to you because we're just going to look into his music because, you know, it's important to kind of gain the same play shows where you know people who are going to enjoy your music. Do you get what I'm saying?
Sure.
So my manager and me, we like look. This is when he was MySpace big. Okay. Yes, I was around, and yes, I had a MySpace.
Oh,
okay.
No.
Yeah, and we looked him up, and I was like, if you guys have heard his music, like, no. For a 13-year-old to be playing the same show as this man? No, sweetie,
and if
no.
you've seen him at that time,
Bro,
honey.
there was no chill. I mean, still has no chill. There was no chill, right? But that was a cool experience too. I was like, sorry, Tarzan, like, we're not gonna do that. Like, he's a little freaky deaky.
Yeah,
he's a little out there.
I'm a little scared of
but
him.
yeah, that was really funny and cool, like things that just never happened, like just happened.
Right.
It was dope.
Yeah. So I think like that's hilarious.
I love Jeffree Star. I'm so mad at myself. I'm like, I don't even know who you are. That's why I changed my name. I want nothing to do with you. You turned down Snoop Dogg and Jeffree Star. Get out.
Yeah, you're like, I don't want to be called Leah anymore. Like, how dare you?
Bro, how dope would that have been?
Yeah, for you to be able to be like, I mean, everything else that you've said was pretty dope, but like, that would have been really
I have
cool
more
too.
stories, but I don't want to.
Okay, yeah. No.
I don't want to be that person.
Right. No, I mean, I think that you should be that person,
funny.
but I respect you. I'm not going to push it. So, all right. So you're having all these great experiences. Obviously, with everything good, there comes like pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
Right? There's pros and cons to eating Chick-fil-A. Like, if you get that spicy deluxe, you know, like anything that's too much. Like, let me finish my Chick-fil-A rant because I had to switch from spicy deluxe to the regular Chick-fil-A deluxe chicken sandwich because I was having that spicy deluxe. And let me tell you about the heartburn. Let me tell you about the heartburn and other stuff that came along with it. It was great going in, but horrible coming out.
You did not just like, you did not just, I can't with you.
But here's my whole point is that too much of something, like to everything.
Yeah.
There's pros, there's cons to it, right?
Yeah.
And so with your music, like obviously there was a lot of pros and there was also a lot of cons.
Yeah.
And so like it wasn't all negative, but it wasn't all positive.
Right.
You know, like there's the reality of what it like how it affected you. Right. And so you're going through all these amazing experiences, you're doing all these amazing things, your music is sent to LA Reid, and then what happens?
I crashed and I burned.
Okay. All right.
No, yeah, it all caught up to me. It became too much at an age where like I really needed to start to find who I was. I feel like 15 is an age where you start to kind of come into your own type of thing. And that's where I was at. I didn't know who I was. I only knew who people told me I was or who I thought I should be instead of knowing it for myself. And I was clinically depressed. I was diagnosed with depression. It was just a lot. I was on medication for it, and it was really tough. I think too for like my family, I think we were just tired too. It was just, and not tired of like, oh, the struggle of the music. It's like tough.
It takes a toll on you.
Yeah, no, it was more just like emotionally tiring because it was so much behind closed doors.
Sure.
So much going on.
Right.
And I just finally broke. I mean, I remember where we were like sitting and they were like, we need to take a break. Like, it's time to just breathe and just like find who you are. Just rest. We're all kind of tired too. And I think the whole team was relieved. I was relieved too. I mean, I was heartbroken because I was like, okay, but I think I was more relieved than anything because I'm like, okay, I can just breathe and just be a 15-year-old.
Sure.
I was never allowed to like be my age. And still to this day, it's kind of hard for me to just be a 22-year-old. Sure. I really look at myself like I'm like 30.
Right.
And I think like I should be successful by now. But no, it's not reality.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Act your age, people. And like, I mean, like, if you're 15, just act 15. If you're 13, just chill and be 13.
Don't rush it.
Yeah, like that's my biggest advice for anybody who's an artist, or like just be who you are when you are in that time. That's the best thing you can do for you and your artistry.
That's really good. That's really, really good advice.
Thank you.
Who's making our t-shirts? Make that into a t-shirt. So you are now taking a break, and like I guess that's what kickstarts like your healing. I would say I don't know if it's healing, but rest, you're healing your
my
rest.
Healing process.
Right. So what are like some of the small changes? Because like here's the thing, like our podcast is called the Butterfly Effect Podcast, and like if you don't know what the butterfly effect is, it is this concept where a butterfly can flap its wings in Chicago and cause a tsunami in China. And it's this concept of like small changes can have greater impact.
Yeah.
And so like that's what I kind of want to like in this segment, like what were the small changes that needed to happen in order for you to have a greater impact today, present day?
So the first thing I did was I rested. I chilled. And I got plugged into a church, which was the best thing like I could have done and like my family could have done for me at the time, because that's in a sense what I really needed. I think that's what my heart was really crying out for, was like this relationship with God. And it was kind of that time where I put my calling and I put my gifting and I put all of that to the side, and I just really started to focus on this relationship. And I feel like that's at that age, that's when you kind of, at least that's when I started. I don't know. I've always been a little bit more mature because of like the music industry.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like 15 is like that time when you start to like genuinely think about your relationship with God.
I would agree with that, because that's when I got saved, was at 15.
Yeah, so I guess I got saved at 15, I would say.
Right.
And I really started to like put my energy into that rather than into what I'm not, and thinking about all those failures. I mean, it was still there, it was still present, but I started to put my focus on things that were more important.
Sure. So you're focusing like, so now instead of focusing on the shame, right? Like what you were saying, you're focusing now on, okay, like who is this God? And and you're in a sense being exposed.
It was like a new excitement. I started to listen to like, I didn't know what Bethel music was. I didn't know what really Hillsong was like. I didn't know any of that stuff, and that whole world was opened up to me through that church, and it was so fun. Like it was finding music in a different way, and I feel like I started to do music not for not for entertainment, but for like ministry in a sense, which is what my heart really was. I really just loved being there for people, and like being that place where people can be like, you really like inspire me, or like you really touched my heart. Like I would get that even when I was doing like secular music. Right. And so I feel like I really came into my own while doing like ministry. Right. So I was definitely not ready to do ministry, but like I still did it. So
right. Because you were hurting and stuff like that. But I think like ministry was good for you, because it exposed you to like, it made, so because you know about God, because you grew up in a Christian home. It wasn't like it was like your first time meeting God, but your relationship with God
in a sense it was.
Right. But like it wasn't like your relationship with God was like it started.
There was no relationship with God.
That's
period.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that ministry is what kickstarted your relationship with God.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, and again, like I think like there's pros and cons, again, like everything else. Like I think like ministry to me is not something that we just do. Right. And we'll get into my story in an episode and like my view on ministry and stuff like that and what I've learned. But like what I was taught is that ministry is a very important thing. And so like as much as I'm like, yo, that's awesome. Like I believe that the Lord used that for your life. Yeah. Like I'm very much the type of person that's like, you need to make sure that you know who the Father is before you start leading people. And I think that's kind of like where like, I don't know, like I'm appreciative that that's your story, but I think like, I don't know, like
I know what you're saying.
You get what I'm saying? Like that's not everyone's story. No. I don't know. I don't think
it's necessarily healthy for everybody. It just worked for me.
It worked for you. Like it was a good outlet, I think.
And it was so it wasn't like it was like in this big church, or it was like in a home. And there was like 20 people.
Right, and I think
like,
that's
it
why
started
it
really
worked.
small. Yeah.
And I think that's why it worked. And you were also surrounded by people your age.
Yeah,
who
finally.
were kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah, it was like, whoa, what's this? Like, and it was the first time being surrounded by people who were doing what I did and them not competing. Because, you know, music is like a sport at this point. It's like competitive, very competitive. I remember when I would do shows, I hated doing shows with people that were my age because they were so nasty. They were nastier than like the older people. I was like, bro, why do you have to act like that to me? Why?
Right.
I'm not here for the petty drama.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. So
yeah, so it was
helpful at the time. Yeah. So now you're 15 and you did that for how long? Like 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
So you're 20 and
20, yeah.
And what ends up happening?
It became unhealthy. But I think that's because I didn't really know who I was. And I lost myself in it, in doing ministry and all that. And I started to dip my hands into things that I wasn't supposed to be doing, like not that I wasn't called to do those things, like administrative things and stuff like that. I was just called to music. And I think that started to take a toll on me because I buried something that was alive from when I did my music. And what it was is the pain of not feeling like I'm enough. Being a people pleaser, all those things started to resurface again, and I didn't know what to do because I thought that I dealt with that already 5 years ago, and why am I feeling this again? And you know what I mean?
Right. And I think I'm seeing kind of some parallels because you keep kind of saying, like, you say the same thing where you were like, when you were doing your music secularly, it's like, I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
Now you're doing music in the church and it's like, I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
So it was like music was always your identity.
Yeah.
Right? Would you say that?
Yeah, for sure.
So now we're present day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you're doing music again.
Yeah.
Like, now what's different?
I'm just doing it for myself.
Right.
And like, I know who I am apart from it because I learned
Learned your lesson.
I learned like the third time.
Right. So
Yeah.
like you were giving, like you've been dropping some nuggets this entire episode, but like what advice can you give like either up and coming artists or people who are already in the music, like already doing it, like have been doing it for some time? Like what advice can you give them from your story?
Yeah.
Like
I
what
would
can they
say,
learn
like,
from you?
it's so important to just know who you are and to be confident in that. Confidence is like the biggest thing. And I think don't strive to be something, especially be what people want you to be. I think that's really important. Again, just to know who you are and to just, I have this issue, but just like try to have fun and know that if you're called to it, like you're called to it. Like it's something that is going to happen for you. And that just because something seems like a failure, it's not. It's genuinely not. It's building character and it's building your testimony. And it's really important to have those moments and have those stories because then you can remember what God brought you out of. And that's kind of like where the space I'm in now is that like I'm kind of dealing with like that same issue of like people pleasing and not being enough, not feeling like I'm enough. Because I'm finally facing it and it's really hard. Yeah, I like if you're called to it, know that it's gonna happen. But I would say like don't do it for a goal. I think it's good to have healthy goals. Don't get me wrong. Like be like, I want to do this one day. I want to do that. I think that's great. But don't make that the reason why you're doing it.
Right, like your driving force.
Yeah, like that's not why you're doing it.
Right.
Like do it for yourself first. That would be my biggest advice for anybody doing anything.
Right.
Do it for yourself.
Yeah. And
be confident in that. Be confident in what God called you to. And confidence is tough, especially in this industry. And also because there's so much talent. And I say this a lot. This is something that I learned in this past season is that it's not about talent. it's not about like your gifting. It's just about who God called you to be.
Right.
And that's it.
Mm.
Like, let that be on display rather than your talent and your gifting. I don't have to worry about that. Yes, I want to perfect my craft because I want to be good at what I do.
Right.
But that I don't perfect it for people to like me.
Huh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I perfect it because I want to make sure I steward the gift that God gave me.
That's good. That's really, really good.
And it's hard because I have to take my own advice because I'm really hard on myself. Like really, really hard on myself.
Right. And I think, like, I don't know, like, one thing that you said that like popped into my head that we learned is, like, delay is not denial.
Right.
Like, the waiting, as tough as it is, because I think, like, even you, like, you've sat with a lot of artists that have said, like, it's taking too long. Yeah. Like, even you yourself have been like,
I know.
Yo, like, it's supposed to happen. Like, it's taking so long. And, like, it's like this sense of delay, but it doesn't mean that it, like, and then we mistake it, like, did I get it wrong? Mm-hmm. Like, all these things, you know what I'm saying? Like, you've been working at it in a sense since you were 12.
Yep.
And you're now 22, right? Like, you've been on this journey.
I've been doing it for 10 years.
You've been on this journey. Mm-hmm. And, like, now you're here, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, and it's in a sense is like, okay, like, I'm waiting. When is it? You know what I'm saying? I was almost there, but it didn't happen. When? And, like, that pain of waiting, then there's discouragement and all these different things that kind of settle in.
Sorry, I cut you off.
Go ahead.
No, I think it's really important to also be, like, very aware of what you're feeling and the season that you're in. That's one thing that I learned is, like, pay very close attention to what you're feeling and the season. And I don't mean feeling like, I'm sad, blah, blah. No. I mean, like, what you're genuinely feeling your heart stirred towards. And it's important to know that the season you're in so that you know what you need to work on. Because we go from season to season to season to season. Right. Like, it's not forever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I know the waiting process is not forever. It's a season. It might be a long one, but, like, pay attention to what you need to do in that time.
That's good.
It's really important.
That's good.
Because I feel like people get really discouraged and they're like, well, forget it. And it's like, well, you just kind of threw up the white flag.
Yeah.
Kind of just gave up right there.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I learned is, like, I refuse to give up. I have come way too far. It's been 10 years of, like, nothing but building my testimony and my character. And it would be a shame if I gave up now. Right. Like, it would be a shame.
Yeah. There's this reminds me, I'm not going to sing it, but there's this gospel song that as a kid, I used to go Hope Center Tabernacle, and as a kid the choir used to sing it, and I remember I used to sing it and I used to cry and I used to, like, give it all I got, but the words, like what you were saying, it says, like, I just can't give up now. No. And it says, like, I've come too far from where I've started from.
I have come too far to only come this far.
Right. And that was pretty much the gist of the song, and they were like, nobody told me that this would be easy, and, like, it's like this sense of, like, declaration, like, man, like, this is a hard road that I'm walking on, and there's times where it gets tough and I want to give up, but because I've come way too far, I can't stop here. Right. I have to keep going, and I think that's something that kind of, like, what we've been being reminded of is, like, keep going, don't stop. And that's something that, like, I remember every time I would go through something, I would literally sit myself down, whether it was, like, my quiet time or whatever, and I would be like, Steph, keep going. Like, don't stop. Yeah. Like, just keep fighting. Keep going. And I remember when I went through one of the toughest times, like, I called my dad and I was like, I was going through it. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And he was like, keep going. Yeah. Like, you can't stop. Yeah. And I think, like, that's what I see throughout your story is this sense of, like, not stopping.
I always get back up.
You always get back up, and that's why I love your story. That's why I'm always like
I take pride in that.
Right. That's why I'm always telling you, share your story, because you've been knocked down. You have every reason to be like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Things that people have said to me, like, to my face from when I was young and, like, stuff like that, like, I still hear it in the back of my head. Right. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really go away. But like, it doesn't stop me.
It doesn't. Yeah. And I think like that's what I appreciate about your story. It's like, it's not faking the reality that you went through. And it's not also like taking that reality and being like, it's all negative. It's all negative. It's like, no. This is what it was.
No, I'm so happy.
Yeah. There's good. Story. There's bad to it. And it was hard for me, for my family, but we kept going. We didn't stop. I didn't stop. And that's what I like. That's what I love. That's what's so encouraging. And that's why there's so much hope in your story, because it's the sense of like, keep going. Like whoever you are, keep going. Don't stop. It may suck right now. It may be hard right now, but keep on going. It gets better.
Yeah. And something I learned is like, if a door closes, it's okay.
Yeah, that's something your dad...
It's okay, guys.
Yeah, that's something that your dad like really instilled in me, which was, Steph, if a door closes, move on to the next one. God says not right now. And then maybe later on in life, you're going to revisit that door again, but don't stop moving. And like that's, I'm telling you right now, that's something I'm going to instill in my kids.
Oh, yeah.
Like shout out Joe with the wisdom. Like your dad has instilled so many like these like wisdom, these little nuggets that I'm like, oh, like, it really shaped my view on certain things. You know what I mean? Like at the time, of course, I'm not like, wow, thanks, Joe. I'm like, Joe, stop talking to me. Yeah. I'm like, no, that's not what I want to hear. Just like, I bendito me a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And your dad's like, no, it's okay. We're going to get him a shirt. It's okay. Everything's okay.
Yeah. And he also says like, success doesn't happen overnight.
He does.
And if it does, it's not a good thing.
So we're present day. What can we expect from you in the future?
So 2018 was the death year. 2019 was the day that it was the whole Lazarus come forth. Hence Lazarus Studios. I got out the grave, dusted off my clothes, and I started walking. And 2020 is definitely the year where I want to like actually begin my artistry and like release stuff. Like I've been working on stuff and I'm still kind of dealing with that frustration and all of that, working through that. But yeah, I feel like 2020, like you're going to hear my music, and I want to 100% do like a live show, a few live shows. And yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, 2020 is definitely, I'm going to focus on my artistry.
So we keep a lookout for Elizabeth. Or is that what you're going to go by?
I don't know. I have no idea.
So we're going to keep a lookout for your stuff. Like that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Hey, thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable and honest and transparent about really, really hard topics. And I think like as we progress and as we evolve in this podcast, like some of the things we want to talk about is mental health and the importance of mental health and healthy emotions and healthy balance in your emotions. And being aware of those things, and we kind of touched on it here a little bit. Like that's definitely part of your story is learning how to be healthy in your emotions, learning how to be healthy mentally and know who you are and evolve as a woman. And so like thank you so much for touching on all these topics. They're raw, they're real, and they're very vulnerable. So like I appreciate it, and I know the audience will really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you guys like this podcast, give it a thumbs up, comment down below, let us know what you guys think. If it's your first time, if this is the first episode you guys are listening to, go and listen to our other episodes and let us know what you think about those episodes. Next week, we're going to release another podcast, so just stay with us. If you want to be a guest on here, if there's topics that you want to hear from us, and if there's music you want us to play in the beginning or ending of our intro, let us know. Send us your music, send us your stuff. We'd love to hear it. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, share it with your friends,
Please
share it with people around you. Like these are conversations that we want to have with other people. I think it's important to have.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So again, thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing your story,
guys.
We love you guys, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.